Jesse, thank you so much for taking the time to sit with me today.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this conversation so our audience can be able to know our organization and specifically our department a little bit better. Awesome. So, why don't we start off by telling our audience who you are, your role within the organization, and how long have you been with Samaritas?
Okay, so I'm Jesse Garrison. I'm the program manager for long term foster care, which is a refugee program, and I've been here for 9 years.
9 years. Awesome. So, Jesse, when can you explain to our audience what exactly is long-term foster care?
Sure. So, like I said, it's a refugee program. Typically, when children enter the U.S. Without legal standing through the unaccompanied children program, they usually go to a family member here in the U.S., whether that's a parent, a sibling, a cousin, an aunt or uncle, sometimes just a family friend or a neighbor that they were close to in country of origin. That's well over 90% of
Hmm.
those cases. There's still a good chunk of kids that don't end up going to a home that way. So they can opt to go into long term foster care to be able to stay here in the U.S., be
Hmm.
part of a foster family while their legal case is being sorted out. So the goal being that they get some form of legal relief here in the U.S. so that they can stay.
Sure, sure, absolutely. So that is that a different how does that program differ from the unaccompanied refugee minor program, the URM program?
Okay, so the Unaccompanied Refugee Minor Program is a federal program for kids that have gotten some form of legal relief, typically special immigrant juvenile status
Mm.
or asylum.
Okay.
But there is that gap in between arriving here in the U.S. and getting that legal status. So
Sure.
that's where long term foster care comes in. The kids are still in progress of
Oh.
getting their legal status.
Okay, so it sounds like the difference being that it's just waiting for getting that legal status resolved. Is that the main the linchpin, the differentiating factor between those two programs? Is one is still waiting for that status to be resolved, and then the other has already received the legal status as refugees. Is that the difference then?
That and everything that comes with the legal status. So, like kids in the URM program, they are able to find jobs. They're able
Mm.
to do a lot of things that kids in long-term foster care can't necessarily do without having legal status.
Sure, sure. So how so when these youth that are in the whether it be the long-term foster care program or whether it be the unaccompanied refugee minor program, what is their age range? Do they, is there overlap there with age ranges, or do they differ in terms of age range?
We're mostly seeing teenagers.
Okay.
Technically, all ages can come through, but if you just think about, the thought as a parent of sending your child overseas to possibly not even having a family member lined up to receive them, it's typically going to be teenagers. Um,
Teenagers.
and because usually the kids in URM have passed through the long-term foster care program, like if we have a 14 or 15-year-old in long-term foster care, they're going to be 16, 17 when they're in URM.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
maybe skewing a little bit older than
Yeah.
the long-term foster care program just because of that.
Okay. Yeah. So, in terms of when a youth has been placed within a foster care home,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of continual care does Samaritas provide to both that youth as well as the foster care parent? I'm sure it's not all on the parents', hands at that point. I'm sure we still provide some continual care. Can you explain to our audience what that care might look like?
Sure. So we have in our program, the different positions are like a kid would be assigned a case manager and a clinician before they arrive.
Sure.
So that case manager is in the home quite a bit, at least once a month. And in the meantime, they're also working on helping them navigate the medical and dental care, any follow-up that they need there, getting payment authorized for any kind of treatment. They're following up with the school to make sure that everything is okay there. So sometimes there's difficulties navigating ESL services, especially if a family is not familiar with that, haven't had kids that have
Sure.
partaken in that service before.
Mm-hmm.
The clinician is meeting with the child once a week, if not more, if needed. We have what's called a behavior support and resource development specialist. That's just an extra hands-on role that is kind of unique to our program. Not every LTFC program has it, but that's just for more complex cases, for like lining up with community resources, things like that.
Okay.
And so there is that continued case management support from the time of arrival until they discharge into URM or something else.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when it sounds like we're there. We're sticking with these youth. Through thick and through thick and thin, whatever it is that they need. And we're. It sounds like we're also helping the parents out quite considerably, for sure. What would you say is the most pressing need right now for our department, specifically the long-term foster care program, or the you unaccompanied refugee minor program? What would be the most pressing need at this time?
Okay, so for long-term foster care, just like every foster care program in the country,
Yeah.
We can always use more homes.
Okay.
For long-term foster care specifically, I would say homes that are, comfortable with the idea of getting a kid in their home whose culture they may have no familiarity with whatsoever. Like, these kids are coming from all over the world, some countries that, most people in the U.S. have maybe not heard of yet.
Yeah, yeah. That you mentioned they're coming from all over the world. Is there specific areas predominantly that we see these kids coming from, or is it just spread everywhere?
So typically, I would say most of the kids come from Central or South America. So
Okay.
a lot of Spanish speaking, but also a lot of speakers of Mayan languages in Guatemala.
Okay.
Beyond that, we see a lot of kids coming from Central Africa, those countries. We still see Afghans coming through.
Yeah.
I know that the U.S. pullout was a few years ago, and the big, exit happened years ago, but we still are seeing kids coming from Afghanistan. I would say the majority, though, are Latin America and a lot of Central African kids.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I know it's surprising to me, the fact that it seems like it happened a little while ago, that pullout, but yeah, we're still seeing the residual effects of that even to this very day, with the kids still coming from that region here, and so the need is still alive, today as it was then. It sounds like, for sure. So Jesse, I'm gonna ask you a little bit more of a personal question now.
Okay.
Hope you don't mind. In terms of the work that you do, the work that we do here at Samaritas, but you specifically, what would you say is the most fulfilling part of the work that you do? What brings you the most joy about coming to work and doing what you do on a daily basis?
Okay, so as long as I can remember, I've tried to, keep aware of what's going on in the rest of the world, stay plugged into the news, stay curious about other countries and cultures, and so we see, blips on the news about, conflict areas and areas of instability and things like that, humanitarian crises and whatnot, and it's great that in this work, like, we can see that, but then think, but we're helping with that directly. We can maybe like put names to faces of kids that have come from those areas and know that, they're in a safer place now because we're providing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I definitely echo that. And I think I'll just add, from my experience, what brings me the most joy is seeing the kids that have gone through our program and then seeing them grow up and become self-sufficient, stable, and even prosperous adults is it does bring a tear to your eye. Like, wow, like we actually played a role, and look at where they're at today. You know, so
Yeah.
definitely, I think there's fulfillment there in the work that we do. So. Well, thank you again, Jesse, so much for your time and sitting down with us and just explaining our department a little bit more and our organization a little bit more. I'm sure that the audience was able to get a nugget or two at least from the things that you've said. So thank you so much again.
Sure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Until next time, guys, take care. Bye bye.